So far we've used database indexing to reduce the amount of time it takes to get an expensive query back from the database. I want to take this a step further and show you caching and how we can use this to reduce this time even further. In other words, how we can use it to avoid even hitting the database at all, and instead storing the results of the query into a cache. Now, the cache we're using here is an object cache as opposed to something like a web cache, an HTTP cache. So we're going to use the technology like Redis or memcached, and specifically I'm going to use Redis in the series because I like it better. But you can use stuff like Redis or memcached or even a file system, and there are other drivers as well, and all they really end up being is a key value store. And typically they will save stuff into RAM, so it's really fast to read and retrieve from it. And because this is so fast, we often save a lot of time by grabbing stuff from a cache, from an object cache, instead of hitting the database every time we need some data. Now, this comes with some considerations, of course. So, for instance, you need to know how long you want an item to stay in cache because they typically will have an expiration. So for some things, it's good to keep something in cache for 30 seconds. For other use cases, it's good to keep stuff in cache for a matter of hours or days or even weeks. It really all depends on how quickly your data moves and how important it is that it is always up to date, as well as considerations of how much read traffic you get. In other words, how much the cache is going to be used. So even if you have something that updates multiple times per second, it still might be helpful to cache it if you're getting hundreds or thousands of reads per second, which you might get on a very, very heavily used site. So what I want to do here in just this first video is set up Redis. So I'm going to go here, and I'm actually using Docker for this, but it doesn't really matter what technology you use to host your development site, but just know that I have Redis up and running, and the host name for Redis in my case is going to just be the word Redis. So if I tell my .m file to use hostname Redis, it's going to point to that. So that's really all you need to know there. I just want to show you setting up Redis in your application. So we have a Laravel.m file here. I'm going to set the cache driver to Redis. And while we're here, I'll also set that as a session driver too, because you might as well while we're here. And then I'm going to set the Redis info. So the Redis host here, instead of being 127.0.0.1 or wherever your Redis instance is, for me, it's actually the word Redis, which becomes a host name that I can use within my Docker setup. I have no password. It has the default password, so that's all set. So we are going to see an error here when I refresh this. And that's because to use Redis with Laravel, you need the Redis client. So that's pretty easy to get. We'll just do composer require Redis/Redis. And I believe that'll get us a library without any complications. All right, once that's finished, let's head back over here and refresh. And good, we see that it's used. And I'm actually logged out too because we changed the session driver. It's no longer saving it to the file system or on the server. It is now using Redis to save that in session. So I can relog in. And great, I'm in. And we're not using the cache yet. It exists, but we just have set it up within Laravel. So we're good so far. Okay, so in the next video, we are going to see how I implement a naive solution of caching, and then we're going to use a more advanced way to cache objects within your application. And following that, we'll cover some more cache-related stuff as well.